Welcome to the Shulamite Podcast, an extension of Shulamite Ministries and Shulamite.com, with weekly interviews and teaching with author and speaker Martha Kilpatrick and hosted by John Enslow. This weekly podcast is a way to stay connected to the ministry. So come experience anointed messages, not giving just another method, but a living impartation.
And Carol, you talk about when you do, and you work very hard, you're always working hard, but you rejoice in it because you say it's the grace of God. Tell me about the grace of God.
Well, I'm just a dumb, stupid sheep, too, so the grace of God is somehow, I know that when He has called me to do something and that grace takes over, it's easy, and there's a delight in it. There's not a resistance to it. I'm not saying it's not hard at times. I'm not saying that, but there is a joy. The outcome is a joy, even in realizing that He did do in and through you that job, that task, that whatever. There is even in the writing, when you look back and you go, oh my goodness, He wrote that, and I know He wrote it because I struggled like you would not believe to do it. And then when it was done, you look back and go, wow, He really did that.
And that you're making it clear that you don't always experience, well, this is Jesus doing the work. No, you ask Him to do it, or He comes to do it, and you're just in the flow. And your satisfaction comes knowing He has done it and knowing it's blessed and divine.
The cool thing about being in that momentary will is that you feel clean, and there's a joy in it. There's what, Carol?
I know what it is to resist a thing. The feeling of it, for me, there is a non-resistance. It is a flow. It's like a river flowing.
Well, what you're saying, John, is I understand exactly what you're saying. When you are living for one step at a time, one word at a time, one direction at a time, you're not carrying the whole load. I've read that if you sit and fret about work and imagine yourself doing all this work, your body registers that you've done it, and your brain gets exhausted because you have done it in your head. And you're saying it's so simple and easy because you're not carrying the whole world of your responsibility when you're doing it.
The actual work could be exhausting, but there's a cleanness to it, and there is a joy. That's all I can say. There's just a cleanness and a joy. It feels fresh, and I don't know, when you're in the center of His momentary will and listening, you don't feel sullied by. There's something filthy. There's just something filthy when you're doing it on your own, and you feel guilty.
There's no joy because it's flesh.
Flesh makes you feel absolutely.
Flesh is just pure filthy.
Filthy.
Because it's self.
Yeah, and there's a guilt to it. You feel guilty. You feel condemned because you are. But there's a feeling of it, and you're angry, and you're just gutting it out. At least that's my experience.
It's mine too. And Paul tells the Corinthians about it, because the Corinthians, were carnal Christians. And he said, if you build your work on wood, hay, and stubble, it'll burn up. It'll be worthless. And that wood, hay, and stubble is the uselessness and futility of the flesh. But if you build on Christ, he said, it will be eternal. So I don't want to waste my time on wood, hay, and stubble. I have built enough in wood, hay, and stubble.
Well, then the response to that is when God says it's just wood, hay, and stubble, then you get really angry like Cain. You're like, listen, I have offered you, and I've just given you all that work, and I'm exhausted. And you get angry with Him. That's another sign you can know that you're doing it in your own flesh, and if you're angry at God,
wow,
it's probably because you're
and
not
angry
listening.
at the work.
Oh.
I don't always know I'm angry with God, but I'm angry at the work. You have given me so much to do.
Yeah, and it's a burden. It's a heavy burden.
Heavy, impossible.
Impossible. Mm-hmm.
That's why we can't carry the whole load. We can only carry one step.
Exactly. And so if I'm angry and I'm frustrated, I pretty much know I've stepped away from listening and being obedient, and I'm just gritting it out.
Then you can't hear him. You cannot hear him in that state.
No, it's almost like being in hysterics. You're in a frenzy. That's my experience. I'm just stating this as not there's other dirty people that do this. I'm saying this is what it is when I'm doing it. When I step away from the obedience and the joy and the freshness, and I get into the working of my own plan and my own strength and my own will, then I'm angry. I'm mad.
When I feel that, when I experience that, I'm angry with me, not realizing I'm angry with God. I'm resisting what He has given me, but I'm angry at me that I cannot conquer it.
Yeah, statements like, you're so stupid, will come up. Oh, you're so stupid. Why couldn't you do that? Why this and why that? You start judging yourself. You start beating yourself up.
Oh, the enemy's beating you up. He loves it when you get in the flesh because he will either flatter you or condemn you.
Well, here you go with it. If you're listening to yourself, and if I'm only a receptor and I'm not, my thoughts are not, I'm not the originator of any thought. So if I'm condemning myself and saying you're so stupid and you're this and you're this and this, guess what? Your entire enterprise that you're, undertaking is Satan. And he's condemning you through you.
And you can hear that because it's on the flesh.
Ooh, golly, that's just, I don't know if that doesn't prick some hearts, I don't know what will.
Everything that we are called to be or do is so incredibly simple if we would just reduce it to its simplicity. Those who are led of the Spirit are the sons of God. A world of wisdom and freedom is in that. If you're hearing God and if you're obeying Him, you are being led of the Spirit. And then you're in connection, your son, in connection to the family of God and all of His power and His goodness and His energy and His wisdom is flowing through you because you're following the Spirit. Sparks goes so far as to say if you're not led of the Spirit, you're not in sonship. And of course it's true.
How could you be in sonship if you're not listening to the Father? If you're a son because you're listening to the Father.
But you know what? It's the consequences of not listening. It is the consequences that are ultimately a blessing from Him that drive me to the solution, which is Him and listening to Him.
Wonderful point. If we will be driven to Him, if we'll let ourselves be driven to Him, my capacity to keep going is there in my old man.
But you know what? There's a place where that is where this body comes in to me, because I can start going off on a tangent, and the body will see that, identify that, and He, through the body, because I know it's the Lord, through the body, will draw me back to Himself and back to the reality of where I need to be.
Yeah, you do it for me. Yeah.
And you do it for me.
Oh, lovely. I didn't realize that.
Oh, last week.
Following that revelation and being free about work, there was another revelation or another, really a movement of the Spirit in me. It was like the Holy Spirit, being disconnected from the work, because it's work I was on, not people. I didn't consider people a burden. I considered that I wasn't caring enough for people, so it wasn't people that were bothering me. It was the workload. But when I came into the simplicity of just obedience, plus nothing, plus no other movement, it's like I was disconnected from worldliness. And I was disconnected from people in a healthy sense. It was God and me alone. It was He and I. And then I had a great revelation for you in that condition, Carol, because I saw clearly something you needed. So I was more able to minister to you in that state of just God and me. I was wide open to Him without any encumbrance of everything else, so He could give me light and insight that was hit the nail on the head, didn't it? And set you free. And I would not have seen it. I don't believe I would have seen it as clearly or been able to convey it as clearly if I hadn't been sort of disconnected from all the other burdens I was choosing to carry that were presumption and flesh. I can do it. I must do it. It wasn't that I can do it. It was that I must do it. And I wrote about it. I'll have to go back and see if I can recapture some of the words. But it was absolute freedom. And I'll say it was freedom from people. It was freedom from everybody. But it was a connection with them in Christ. I was out of it. And it was Christ in the person that was connected. It was miraculous and wonderful. I've prayed and prayed because Brother Lawrence talks about that. He was in a bubble where it was just he and the Lord. And that seemed to me a bit isolated from people, but it's not. It's not. It's living in Him, and He has the eye on who He has the eye on. So it's really miraculous and wonderful. I want to live there always.
We hope you've enjoyed the Shulamite podcast. For all the latest from Shulamite Ministries, please visit us at shulamite.com, where you'll find Martha's daily devotions, posts from getalongwithgod.com, and the online library of all of Martha's writings. At shulamite.com, downloading the free Shulamite app is easy, and livingchristianbooks.com is only a click away. Thank you for joining us on this journey to discover a God worth knowing.